All right. Good afternoon. Well, I guess it's still morning. I keep losing track of time here. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm Don Irvine, joined once again by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and dog-faced pony soldiers.
Indeed, indeed. All right. Probably more so with everything that's going on. But actually, before we get into the news, I don't think we actually talked much about Mother's Day last week. And so Mother's Day was Sunday. And so this was really, I guess, the first Mother's Day we've had as we're trying to exit the pandemic. I guess it was a little bit more normal for people. I heard, various stories or whatever from people who said that, they did try to have their traditional Mother's Day brunch and try to reserve a restaurant or go to a place. And then they got caught off guard a little bit because of, I think, space limitations or whatever. Some places were sold out. So that people had to kind of alter course a little bit and all that stuff. I mean, you guys usually go out too or do something on.
We go across the street to there's a nice brunch at the club thing across the street, and they had it, and it was full. I mean, I don't know if it was up to capacity, but the whole room looked full, and there was 2 seatings, and the one at 1 o'clock was going to be full too. That we didn't see those people, so it looked pretty normal for a Mother's Day to us personally.
Yeah, I mean, that's
our normal.
That's thing. Good. I mean, yeah, I mean, this is something that we need, as Americans, is that we need to be able to see these types of things, and to, we spent far too much time, being kind of shut down and locked in at home, or had activities limited, not your restaurants closed, or 25% capacity, and all these kinds of crazy things that have been going on. So it's good there. So I'm glad that you were able to do that. We don't go out on Sundays except to go to church. So I thought we were going to do something on Saturday, and my wife was just like, she had her sights on a Korean restaurant that has stuff going on, I guess, between all you can eat between Monday and Thursday. Not like I'm going to be the big all you can eat guy anymore, but and then I think we decided we were going to do maybe something on Monday, and that wasn't going to work out. So it's like, okay, Tuesday, we'll go out on Tuesday. We'll make this up. And so she double checks the restaurant. It's the one day of the week they're closed. So we're like, okay, we'll just do this another day.
I hear you. Right? So it's like when you get married, though, it's like, gift giving gets put off, right? I mean, it's like you think, okay, this person, I'm making sure they get everything they need that day. But a lot of times it's like, well, it's kind of not convenient. And you're both like, okay, well, let's do the convenient thing.
Right. So you just never really
sometimes
know.
It's coming up this week. So we always laugh about this, but we forgot my anniversary is May 15th. And, one year it was like May 21st, and we looked at the clock and then camera the date on it.
Are you going to say
do anything about that?
Are you saying both of you did that?
Both, yeah. So I wasn't even in trouble. I wasn't the one. It's like it was both of us.
Yeah. At least you don't really go to the doghouse necessarily if she forgot too.
If she forgot too. That's right.
Yeah. So you see this year. I mean, May 17th, I guess, is actually tax day this year after they pushed it back, but you're pretty close to tax day this time around as a result of all of that.
That's right.
Well, that's good. So happy anniversary then.
Well, thank you.
How many years?
She deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, a lot. 17 this will be. So.
All right. Good. Ours is coming up in June, so it's I have it on my calendar. Doesn't mean I do the right thing, but I have it on my calendar.
That's more than 17, right?
Yeah, we'll be up to 36.
Wow. See.
So yeah, my parents were married for 57 years. So
and my dad was married for 40 years, and my mom died, and then he remarried, and he was married another 27 years. So he must have been a pretty good marital partner.
Yeah. That's good. That's good for him. All right, so now on to news. So the headline news of today, and we knew that was going to be the case, was Liz Cheney. This has been building up. We were talking about it last week. This is, it finally came to a head today, and she is out.
Good.
So the Republicans voted her out. I was looking around earlier. So it's about an hour ago or thereabouts. I was trying to find something that actually said what the vote was, but I haven't seen it.
It was voice.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's a little. I mean, I'd rather see people stand up, right? But it was passed on voice vote, and there's some critics out there of that, and I mean, it's an internal party matter, right? It's not a public matter. So, the obligation to stand in front of the public for your vote is not what it is on legislation. But I mean, people are going to want to know, and I think most of the members of Congress, it's going to be fairly easy to tell where they stood on this, right? Most of them are either pretty publicly with her or against her. This is something that had to happen. She was trying. This is not just a matter of, well, she doesn't like Trump and they all do, and this is, Trump, Trump has too much control of the party or whatever. That's not really what this is about. What this is about is she is wanting to join with the Democrats to do a 1-6 commission, right? And which is going to just be a jihad of, finding every way they can to link every Republican they can to, so-called violent behavior that didn't occur, and, to do with 1-6. And I think that, that had to be stopped. You can't have people in the leadership of your party working to undermine it that way. It also is a positive in that it's the last vestige of Bushism finally being excised from the party. Reagan, you can go ahead and say he established the modern Republican Party, what we're for, what we're against. He codified it and coalesced the views in the party, right? So Poppy Bush promised to be a continuation of Reagan, and then he turned out not to be. W promised to be a restoration of Reagan, and then went even farther astray. Okay, those are the people who got us beat, who got Republicans wiped out of the presidency in both houses of Congress, and lost, the ramparts of influence in the country. Right? I mean, they got wiped out by the Obama candidacy and all that it represented because of the poor job he did as president. So, and he aligned us with things like Keynesian economics, weak foreign policy, that, our first foot forward was war. We needlessly attacked Iraq. He got us in a lot of messes. And it was by being unmoored from principle and uninspired by knowledge and so forth. He just didn't, he was a very insular group of people. They made the calls. They were masters of the universe. And those calls really hurt Americans, and in particular Republicans, because it hurt Republicans politically and Americans overall. So finally getting the Bush strain of republicanism publicly repudiated is an extremely important, significant thing for the Republicans to have done here.
So that's an interesting comment that you made here about the Bushes. I mean, it's not the first time you've kind of pinpointed them as part of the root cause of some of the issues the parties had and everything like that, because we talked about a little bit this last week with Cheney last week as well. But it does make me wonder in terms of what your feeling is as to, is it really because of the unprincipled moorings, that type of thing like that, or does also a factor of how they wanted to be seen in history also play a part, when how sometimes these Republicans, and I tend to think this happens to Republicans more than it happens to Democrats, that, they start to look at, particularly W towards the end of a term, or as they know that, okay, I only have 2 terms. How is history going to look at me, And so then they also adjust so that they are going to be considered kindly, though history tends over time to soften that. I mean, Nixon went out as a louse, but over time he was largely rehabilitated in a lot of ways.
Yeah, he was, became an elder statesman, so to speak. The Frost interviews really helped him, made a lot of difference in how he was perceived. It gave some people some nuance to that story. W has tried to present himself as the heir to Reagan, and Trump as not the heir to Reagan, right? I mean, they have the other thing is like you see these. I guess there's 100 people who are saying they're going to sign something today or tomorrow to start a new Republican Party unless the Republicans agree to their demands. And these are people like, Mary Peters and Christine Todd Whitman and Charlie Dent. No one cares about their demands. No one has any intention of honoring them. And no one's worried about, what they're going to be as a party, whether they're any kind of threat to Democrats or Republicans. My thing is they probably will take more votes from Democrats who are looking for that, moderate middle thing than they will from Republicans, because we look at it, we're like, you didn't lead us when you were in office, and now that you're out of office, that's not what we're looking for even more. So, and I hear them say it's like these people are putting party over country. It's like, you guys voted for Biden, okay? You put party over country, right? You put your dislike of Donald Trump, personal dislike of Donald Trump, over the welfare of the country. So I don't want to hear about it. You guys made this bed, and now you can lay in it.
All right. So Bob has come in with a comment here. He says, I'd like to refer to the Dole, McCain, and Romney trio of GOP presidential nominees in particular as the white flaggers, quote, white flaggers, proverbial cannon fodder for defeat. And that is also a part of it. I mean, particularly to me, Dole, and then McCain, Romney to a little bit lesser extent in terms of the possibility, the chance that they had of winning. I mean, I think from the get-go, I could never figure out how Dole was ever going to win. Right. McCain, an outside chance, at best.
I didn't think McCain had a chance. I thought we kind of forfeited there.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, it was an outside chance. That was not going to be an easy thing. Romney, I think, has a reasonable chance with certain things, but the media and a lot of other factors played into that. And so plus the things that the candidates do to themselves. I mean, they do a lot. They do plenty of damage to themselves along the way. But yeah, I mean, I do try to forget that the whole Dole campaign, because that was forgettable.
Yeah, I try to forget McCain. I thought that the Republicans forfeited that, and I thought the appointment of Palin was saying, we're going to get credit for nominating a woman since we're not going to win anyway, and it doesn't really matter who it is, and that's how it got to be her, right? Because it would have mattered who it was. That would have been someone with a live chance to win and then be part of this coalition going forward and possibly become president herself, the way people used to talk about Kamala Harris, but you haven't heard much of that lately either. I don't think that's what Palin, they would have chosen someone else. I think they chose Palin because they knew they were going to lose, and they just wanted to get credit for choosing a woman.
I think that definitely has part of it. I mean, they look like by nominating a woman, you give yourself theoretically, or at least think, oh, but it might give us a little bit better chance, because we're doing something that a lot of people wouldn't have expected us to do. Palin, I think, to me, was a lot more of a pit bull than McCain. I think McCain was too much. He's too much the negotiator, the conciliatory type. Palin, at least she seemed to come out of it at the gate as kind of almost take no prisoners. But she developed into a different kind of persona over time. I mean, she had a big following, but there were a lot of goofy things about Sarah Palin, and people like that who have faded into the background. I don't miss them.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't like getting blamed for her. Everything that she came up with. I mean, it was basically what it was. It's like you were held responsible for whatever whatever emanated from her next, and she wasn't ready for prime time. You tried that now, you might get a different result. I don't know, but you might have. She might be a more serious person now. She wasn't ready for that.
Yeah. So the other comment here that we'll make, which is just kind of an open-ended, but a very much of a softball, I guess we'll say, is that. But Brian, on Liz Cheney, the media has said it's because she's being ousted because of her loyalty towards Trump, and that she wants to tell the truth about the big lie. I can't believe you're telling me I can't believe the media.
Well, I mean, she. Why are you making a point about that, right? We would have all stopped talking about that if she wasn't raising this. They have the theory that there's this third force in American politics that's between the Democrats and the Republicans, and that a not all that conservative Republican can capture those people and win an election. And it's not there. It's never really been there, and it's definitely not there now.
Yeah. Bob has come in with another comment based on our talk after his last one about the trio there. It says Romney gave up in the foreign policy debate versus Obama. He should have pushed much harder. That's very true. I mean, particularly, I think, wasn't that the debate? I mean, he was talking about Russia and Candy Crowley pushed back, and he really should have fought harder because in the end he was right.
Yeah. And he didn't stand up for it. That was the problem with Romney was, a lot of what he was for was good stuff, right? But and we don't know what he would have done as president, because it looks like there's at least two sides of Romney, and that's become more apparent since then too. But that he was supportable from what had been presented to us at that point. But he was not. When he got attacked, he couldn't defend himself. It's like, remember they had the guy who had I guess it was Jimmy Carter's brother or cousin or somebody who had secretly taped him giving a speech talking about 47% of the people don't pay taxes. I mean, that was a death sentence to his campaign, and it shouldn't have been, right? That is a problem that you have, and it's that problem has grown a lot worse now because you have those people, they're making incredibly selfish, short-sighted demands on the Treasury, and they're not paying anything into it. It's like, why don't you just give us all of everyone's money? Like, well, why should we give you all of everyone's? I mean, this is playing out in real time now, but so many people are blowing off, going back to work because they're making so much on unemployment, right? We voted ourselves the Treasury, and we're sitting around spending it. Well, at some point, the people who pay into the Treasury, they're going to say, hey, those guys are sitting around doing nothing, and their lifestyle is as good as mine. I'm wasting 8 hours a day supporting them.
Right.
I mean, that's coming. That's happening today. So he was right about that, but he didn't stand up for it. He didn't, he took that. He let that be the knockout punch. He went on down to the canvas and laid there. Right. He could have gotten up, but he didn't.
Yeah. No. I mean and yet that is very emblematic of a lot of Republicans. I mean, that is one of the differences about Trump is that Trump fought all the way through everything. I mean, whether or not people liked it or not, compared to that. But Romney is standing up, and maybe that's part of the other side of Romney. He stood up to Trump, and he's been standing with Cheney, and he's talked about, this is, Republicans, voters are going to leave, as a result of this, and that is part of the thing is that, who really at this point, I mean, I think after January 6th, I mean, if there were people who were going to leave, they left. I mean, I look at our Central Committee, which at this point, I don't plan on running again for re-election next June because I think it's getting to be kind of a muck and a mess right now, and it underscores some other issues of the Republicans about how they operate locally as well. But I did put down, I mean, is all of this stuff with Cheney, I mean, how does this fit in? I mean, I think, wasn't it Joni Ernst that called this cancel culture, Yeah,
I'm wondering why. I'm wondering what Joni Ernst is doing there, because it's not really consistent with other stuff she said. And, I see what she's saying, like, you're canceling someone for something they said. But what she's saying, is would arm the Democrats with enough ammo to wipe us out, right? You can't let people do that and be in leadership of the party. She goes to the back bench. She's free to say what she wants, but we need to have people in leadership who are in tune with the party, who are not directly working against the interests of the party. I don't think it's unreasonable to remove someone who's doing that.
Yeah, and my biggest complaint about all of this is just that it is being aired out in public, and as a result of that, it sucks up the oxygen in the room for when for rather than that being able for us to talk about Biden and all the Biden issues and problems, the media, and the left, they can all focus in on this fight, this internal turmoil or whatever you want to call it, and Biden, in the meantime, gets to slide by a little bit, for some other things in the meantime. Though, we're going to talk about this now. You just mentioned the unemployment thing, so we'll go there. So, we had unemployment numbers come out on Friday. They were well below expectations. Economists, I think, were looking for probably about another 1 million jobs to be created. Came out about 266,000.
260,000, and they expected unemployment to decrease 1.5 and it went up a point.
Right, it went up from 6 to 6.1 or something like that.
You're in a recovery. I mean, it should not go up ever, especially coming into spring when home building and tourism and stuff like that picks up.
Right, and as you alluded to, you mentioned unemployment benefits. People. This is one thing where Biden, he will not admit, the effect of all this money pouring into these people, in terms of they're able to sit at home. I think I mentioned last week, Montana is leaving the program at the end of June. I think is it Missouri or one of the others?
Missouri, Alabama. There's a few others now that are starting to say
they're going to leave as well because, the Montana example was, with their rate, people could earn as much as $21.80 an hour for sitting at home, which is more than a lot.
They couldn't hire because people say, "Oh, we'll pay 25." Okay, they were doing that. But people were like 25, and I got to work all day versus 21, and I sit home all day. I'm gonna sit home all day. I mean, it's 85% as much money, and you don't have to lift a finger. And you save on commuting costs. You're not buying lunch out. It probably dollars out at 25, right? To stay home.
Yeah, no,
so
and especially
keep incentivizing sloth, right? You're getting what's going on here is, my dad told me when I was a kid, he goes, if you ever get out of the habit of going to work every day, it'll be very hard to get people back into it, right? If you get out of the habit of, I've got to go be somewhere 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 or whatever it is, and now you just sit at home and your schedule is your own every day, day in and day out. That people are not going to rush back to that, right? Because they're going to see how liberating it is that you don't have to get up, you don't have to go to sleep early at night because you don't have to worry about getting up the next morning. I mean, your whole life is changed, right? Because you're not chained to this work schedule. So he's unmooring people from the work schedule, right? And they are saying they're saying this too. They're not even whispering it. They're saying we're just print money to cover the problem, right? There's enough money because we own the printing press. That's not, you're already seeing, wild inflation. If they included food and inflation in the inflation figures like they used to, you'd have inflation now of nearly 10%.
Yeah,
right?
no, I mean
it's enormous. Food is just unbelievably expensive now.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, like you said, and and for him to basically say, to dismiss that argument, and say, well, it's really fear, people going back to the workplace because of COVID and that the uncertainty of that, and then the childcare thing. I mean, there's a little bit of that. I mean, there are some people, that are unsure about going back to the office, that are being told they need to go back to the office, right? And there still are some lingering childcare issues, but it's not,
especially because they won't reopen schools. See, he's on both sides of that one too.
Right, exactly, right. I mean, and that has been part of the problem. I mean, if the schools aren't, in session, then it does create a childcare burden. I mean, some people already had, they had their smaller kids in childcare, and a lot of those have reopened. But if you've got school age children, you've got a real dilemma here in terms of how you're going to work that. But you're right. You said, as you talked about, as we've unmoored, from all of this, the idea of going to work, commuting, all of the things that we did. I mean, who want, what's the value? People have looked at this now and they said, what is the value now for me to be stuck in traffic for an hour each way or whatever it may be?
Right.
And, to go on a subway, to get on a bus, whatever the mode of transportation is that gets me to the office, how much is that worth versus the ability for me to stay home? Maybe I get a different job that doesn't pay me quite as much, gross, but I net at least as much, if not more, and my quality of life has gone up tremendously because I now set a different schedule. I can be with my kids or be with my spouse or significant other, and it's changed. And so we have seen that the pandemic has dramatically changed that. And as the lockdowns continued, people didn't have to go back to the office. Schools stayed closed. People started to look and they reordered and reprioritized their lives.
That's right. And and now you have clear, the evidence is clear that we should be reopening, right? The states that have reopened have far less cases of COVID than the states that stay locked, right? It's staying locked is making us sick, right? The places that are doing it, such as here in Virginia and where you are in Maryland, right? It's actually making people sick to not reopen the schools and reopen and unlock, business and so forth and get us back on track. But that, you've built this thing now. And this is a thing where, Democrats, this is right up their alley. They control your life. They have they can dole out money to you as they see fit. They can, put the imprimatur on the people running against them. Hey, are you going to let these people starve? You're not going to give them $300 a week so they can just make ends meet in this critical time? It's like, why don't they just go back to work? Why don't you just restore the Trump economic policies that were working and step away from the table, right? You'll be a hero because it'll work. People will flourish as they were then, right? So, but they're not ready for that yet. Now, another thing that has to be looked at on that is it is becoming apparent that the federal government's foot dragging on this, and it's constant Fauci up there testifying, oh, we got the 235 variant, the 513 variant, 9222 variant, and we got all these things we got to fear, and we're watching for these signs. What signs to go down, sir? Well, signs. When we see things getting better, how much better? Well, better. We'll know when we see it. So it's all this vague stuff, right? So the federal government is getting associated with the failure of COVID response. Now it's not, before it was all this energy to get a vaccine, energy to get the vaccine distributed, energy to have the PPP and therapeutics and all this so it could be treated. Now it's, everybody relax at home, right? So the sloth is becoming the fault of the federal government, a policy failure of the federal government, just as, the gas situation represents a failure of the policy failure on energy, right? And just as the border disaster represents a policy failure on immigration, right? These are three huge flubs. And overpaying for these stimulus things, that's four huge flubs they've made, right? In the first 150 days that they've been in office. Consequential, terrible mistakes. And their response so far seems to be to just declare it's not happened. There's no crisis at the border. The Department of Secretary of Homeland Security this morning said the border is closed. No one's crossing the border. They're saying, Biden says they won't go back to work because they're afraid, right? These are absurdly untrue things, right? They're not just it's not a matter of phrasing or gray areas or sort out the wording and maybe sort of you can figure out what he was saying if it wasn't accurate. These are absurdly false statements, right? And so, you're seeing a pattern of real consequential, serious policy mistakes followed by absurd declarations that, you can't, don't believe your lying eyes, basically.
Yeah. And the thing about Biden, when he's talking about his unemployment, before we move on, it's just that he's basically saying, he's like, you can't turn down what a reasonable job offer or whatever, you're going to have,
What's a reasonable job offer, Joe?
Yeah, I want to know that.
25 ain't reasonable right now. 25, it's better for me to sit home. So yeah. It's 35. Am I going to have to consider that reasonable and get on out of the house? How are you going to define that?
Yeah, because I guess the state suspended the, you have to prove or tell the unemployment office that you were actively looking for work. Now Biden is, throwing out this other thing. And I thought, well, yeah, just like you said, I mean, how do we define that exactly in terms of, if you get this type of job offer, or, that just seems, I don't know. This is becoming so typical of this administration. But I did, even though I didn't have it down, I mean, I didn't put it down there for this week, but you mentioned the border thing. And just, this is just, it continues to be an ongoing disaster for the administration. We're not seeing much from Kamala at all on this.
Our borders are.
Yeah. I mean, she
disappeared into the woodwork.
Yeah, and nobody's. The thing is that except for people like us and maybe some other conservatives, nobody. The media certainly is not calling the administration on the carpet for this. They're basically buying everything the administration says, and then looking at other things. And they're really giving the administration a pass on so many things.
Well, they've been obsessed with the Liz Cheney business, right?
Right.
And so, can you imagine who is the number 3 person in House leadership? Did I get you?
Yeah, it's
Jim Clyburn.
Yeah, it's Clyburn because it's.
Okay. So we don't even know who their 3rd person is, right?
Yeah.
So they're obsessed with our 3rd person, right? The minority party, minority in both houses. She's the 3rd ranking Republican in the House, right? And the media has been obsessed with this for weeks. Okay, so it's this is not about covering what's important. This is about trying to hurt Republicans.
Right, and nobody really pays attention. I mean, people don't talk about Steny Hoyer that much, or Jim Clyburn. It's even when the Republicans have power, you don't really talk about that. I mean, Steve Scalise kind of appeared because he said he was going to, early on he was going to endorse Stephan for the position to replace Cheney, but otherwise it's really the battle normally is between Pelosi and McCarthy, or something like that. It's not the 2nd person. That's not the 3rd person.
Backbenchers, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, no one would know who Scalise is. I mean, I hate to say it, but if he hadn't got shot, right? I mean, that's how he got to be a prominent, well-known guy, as he got shot.
Right. No, I mean, yeah, that had a lot to do with his rise in the ranks a lot. It's just that, he underwent this terrible tragedy and he survived. It was amazing and everything like that. But I do, before we move on, I do want to ask you though. At least Stefanik had been kind of anointed, as this new number 3. But then it was a Chip Roy. He throws his hat into the room. Yeah. So I mean, is there going to be a little bit, of a race going on there, from your opinion?
Well, I mean, I'm willing to have that discussion. The people are, the thing they point out is Stefanik did not vote with Trump as often as Liz Cheney did. Obviously, if you're in New York State, your calculus on things is a little bit different. You're trying to stay in office in a pretty Democrat state. So I don't know. You'd have to go through and parse out all those actual votes and what she was thinking and why she did it. However, if you look at these hearings and so forth, she asked the best, most focused questions in the hearing. She did as much damage to the Democrats in these hearings. And people like Jim Comey, who she actually caught Comey lying to Congress, will never get prosecuted because, he lied in service of the correct goals or whatever. But she cornered him. She forced him to lie. And it's on tape. You go look up Stefanik, and it's really sweetly done, very calm, not controversial. And then all of a sudden he realizes, she knows the truth and she just got me, and you can see the look on his face he got her. So, I mean, she got him. So, she's a smart lady, and she was a friend to Trump in some key points. So, I would be surprised if it does not end up being her.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard after they've had, so many early endorsements, but, we'll see. I mean, the party can decide, and Roy, I mean, it's, he might get some votes. He just may not get enough to win the post. So we'll let the chips fall where they may. How about that? And it just came to my mind, as corny as that is. So pipeline. So this has been kind of interesting. I mean, this is having, at least for now, far-reaching effects. It goes from Houston up to New Jersey. These Russian-based hackers, I guess it is, got in there, and they got into the information systems, I guess, not the control systems. Ransomware. The pipeline's been shut down as a precaution, and they are trying to bring this back up as quickly as they can. But this is part of a long, kind of ongoing discussion about things in our country, our electricity grid, water, oil and gas type of thing like this. A lot of these systems, they have been in place for a long time. They were pre-internet. A lot of the basics of this have not been hooked up to the internet, which was always thought to be a good thing in the sense of that, that was not hackable. But, control system, I mean, there are things in order to control that over time that as they get upgraded, they do open themselves up to potential hacks, maybe through Windows servers and things like that. Not necessarily the internet per se, but hackers can find ways into the system if you've got an old aging computer system, if you're not really plugging it, not really doing security on things and stuff like that. But boy, the panic that this set forth, across the country in these regions in the South. Like this, we have states of emergency in Virginia and others, in Florida and other states. There are cases where stations have run out of gas, though I'm not clear as whether or not the stations really ran out of gas because they just didn't, a fuel problem, or is it, was it also fueled by this panic? All of a sudden, people said, "Oh my gosh, I've got to go to the gas station."
There is some panic, and you see these people in line with the big plastic gas cans and so forth. And it's like, don't do that. Just use what you need, and we'll all be fine, right? There's enough to meet normal demand. If we're going to hoard, we're going to have a problem. You're going to have a problem anyway. But, gasoline here has already shot up like 40 cents a gallon in the last few days, to reflect this problem. I think, and one of the things that's being talked about is when this comes back online, not having anything to do with the internet. We're starting to learn that there are aspects to the internet that we have to keep a much closer eye on. And this is one of them, how much of the grid should be manipulable in this way, right? Because if good people can control it like this, bad people can too, which appears to be what has happened here. I will say this, and this will make anybody who is not a Trump fan angry. So if you don't want to be angry, this is a good time to mute. If Trump had been president, this wouldn't have happened. And if it would have started to happen, it would be long over, because the people would have been caught and sent packing long ago, because he had security stuff in place that did not let stuff like this happen. And no one tried anything, there was a couple of like small attempts on our infrastructure while he was president, but people decided this guy was a little unhinged and didn't want to mess with him in this way, and to our benefit, right? I was fine with him thinking he might be crazy and do something terrible to him, right? But it didn't bother me at all. So this would have been cleaned up. I mean, these people were like, it's a private company. They can do what they want. We're not supposed to. Well, are you doing anything about it? Well, nah, I mean, it's not really us. And, they don't know what to do. They're hemming and hawing. They don't know how to approach stuff like this. They have no idea. And they don't want to, they're trying, since everything they do is political, they're trying, they're like, okay, people being without gas, that, we want people without gas. We don't want any people to have gas anyway, right? So they kind of, they're kind of like saying, how bad is this? Will people accept it? What happens if it goes on for weeks, right? And there's no gas for weeks. Will people just, find their bus and start taking the bus and quit their cars, and we don't have to worry about this anymore? Of course, no one asks, how does the bus get gas, right? Not a problem. Bus they just keep running, right? No one's ever seen one fill up with gas. So we just assume that they don't really need gas, right? Because we're Democrats. But they're, that's where they are, right? They're not fine. They're not troubled by this at all.
Yeah, Bob has chimed in here again. Much more needs to be done to target those responsible for carrying out cyber attacks, individuals, groups, and countries alike. The United States has the capabilities to take serious action and should use them. That's very true.
That's right.
That's very true. Yeah, I mean, this is, I would almost expect that, if this continues for, a couple of weeks or whatever, that some lefty will come out and, and get some administration support or something like that and say, this is why we need to go all electric. Our green plan is the way to go, because we wouldn't have had this problem. Forget the problem about electricity grid and other issues, like that.
How do you power the electric car?
Right. But let's, yeah, but you can make that the headline. I mean, I'm old enough that I remember sitting in gas lines in the 70s.
Yeah.
Not a pleasant thing. Odd even days of license plates and all this kind of nutty stuff that goes on there. But yeah, I mean, these people running out with their plastic which I guess that's the only kind of gas can that's authorized these days. I don't know if I still have my old metal gas can from when I was a kid, but there's so many things that have been banned in our lifetime. This is unhealthy, it's hazardous or whatever, but it doesn't make sense. I mean, one of the things to me that I can live with these long gas lines or just watching these people, and I'm like, I have full gas tanks. I'm not going out to go top them off. I'm not panicking. We're fine. The prices here right in my neighborhood have gone up maybe 4 cents so far. And, I think they're just everybody's kind of waiting. And there are no long lines in my area. And I've got 5 or 6 gas stations within about 1.5 miles from me. And there's no crisis. There's no panicking in any of those stations so far. But what's crazy to me is like
11:30 last night, and the last gas station I passed before I get home, line around the block at 11:30 at night.
Come on, people.
And that's with that gas. I bought gas there Sunday, and it's 40 cents a gallon more than it was Sunday.
And people are paying. They're panicking and they're paying it on top of that. So it's just, it's like, this is not going. This is unlikely to stay there very long. They get the pipeline back up and running. There, things will ease off. But when you have American.
Go ahead. I want to say one thing about what Bob said is a really good point, because, one of the things that Trump understood that Biden does not seem to is like, what button do you push if this happens, right? I mean, he would have found out like what capabilities do we have to go after the hackers, right? And how do we catch them? How do we punish them? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? He would have known a heck of a lot more about how pipelines work than Biden does. Biden seems to have no understanding of it at all. And B, he would have, understood the tools we have to fight it, to overcome it, and to catch the people and hold them responsible. And, these guys are like, private company, they'll work it out, hope for the best. That's not leadership. That's not, it doesn't and cannot work that way.
Well, right. And I mean, the thing too for that is just that if you besides, making sure that you have whatever security measures you need to have to make sure it doesn't happen again. But if the U.S. would go at it with its full force and really catch and punish these people, that can be a big deterrent for anybody else to try anything else again. But we haven't done that, but I could envision, a Trump being the kind of guy that he is, putting the full weight of the government and our forces and everything that we've got to go root this out to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Right. Because Trump would have looked at, a fourth of the country being able, having its gas supply threatened as a big problem. And these guys, it's like, well, hey, Liz Cheney's getting kicked out. What's wrong with that, man? It's like, where's the focus? Yesterday, the president called it a day at 3:34 p.m. So he has Hamas bombing Israel. He has a fourth of the country's gas prices, gas supplies threatened. He has chaos at the border. He has an economy that they can't hire workers because of his policies. And he knocks off at 3:30 in the afternoon. It's good work if you can get it, I suppose.
Yeah. I was thinking the other day too. It's like, I don't expect that Biden will see any big ceremonies from Biden about, his quarterly check going to pay off something, like Trump did. Yeah.
Will be deposited into his to cover Hunter's legal bills or crack dealer, or what he owes the crack dealer or whatever.
Yeah, but so my other comment here was just about the aviation part of this deal, is that to see American Airlines, adding stops to make sure they stop for fuel for long haul flights. So there was a story that Southwest was going to fly fuel in, necessary, in a sense, this was, if we had been at a normal stage of life, this would have been a real problem, because American Airlines, and so they can manipulate the schedule a little bit, because travel is still not at the level it was. I mean, they had like 1.7 million, I think, screened at TSA over checkpoints over Mother's Day weekend. Normally it would have been like 2.5 to 2.7 million. So there's still a lot fewer flyers going out there. If we were really fully up and running like we had been back in 2019 and early 2020, this thing would have been even more. It would have been worse, even on the aviation industry, if they weren't able to get their a hold of jet fuel. There's a lot of things. So in a sense, if it's going to happen, at least it's happening while we're still kind of in pandemic phase and we're not quite fully operational, because the effect it would have had on this country had we been at normal status would have been
bigger.
Yeah, would have
We're
just
trying to emerge. Yeah,
we're trying. We're definitely trying. I guess that leads into kind of the next couple of things. Fauci and Rand Paul sparring on the whole Wuhan, the virus. Paul trying to make a point about money, going to the lab through this other operation. Fauci then kind of got into a screaming match with that. And then also, kind of surprisingly, with the New York Times, criticizing the CDC about, how what their estimates were and their predictions were for transmission, about do you have to wear a mask outside? How dangerous was it? And all of this stuff. So, we're still kind of going through these things. But I guess was it Fauci that's told Rand Paul that he was absolutely incorrect.
Yeah, he told it. Yeah, and then Rand Paul kept questioning him, and then he said, "Well, there might be this one doctor," and it's like that's all Rand Paul said there was one doctor, right? So sounds like he was right and you were wrong. And then after the hearing, Rand Paul's office released the receipts, right, of the government, the records of the government paying for gain of function research at the Wuhan lab, the actual checks that went out to fund it. So I mean, he got caught not in a misspeak there, not in a mistake, but in an outright lie. He lied to Congress there, and he got caught red-handed doing so. And people need to understand that this was a massive failure of public health. The public health bureaucracy should be clean stem from stern of this, and virtually no one working in it now should have a job in it when this ends, right? And I think that would have happened if Trump would have been reelected, which I think is part of why Fauci, has acted as he has, and over this period, is those people would have been washed out because they didn't understand what they're doing. One of the things that Paul was talking about there is Fauci is right now funding research that they pack a protein onto a virus, right, to strengthen the virus and make it more susceptible, right, because they're trying to see like how susceptible these things can be. So coronavirus is deadly to less than 1/2 of the 1% of the population, right? But this is deadly to 15% of the population. So they're playing around with something that would kill 15% of us if there's another whoops in the test tube goes flying, right? So we can't afford the kind of accidents that he's doing. And that the point Paul was making is we're funding things that could kill us, right? And when we're not funding it in the United States, we're funding it in our biggest geopolitical enemy. We're letting them do that research, and we're giving them the money to do it. It's incredible that we're paying for this. I mean, I don't know, maybe someone needs to come on and explain, why do we need to know gain of function? Why do we need to do this research? Why do we need to invent diseases to see what happens, right? Why can't we just stick with the diseases we have and try to get those straightened out before we move on to others? There may be reasons. I don't know, but this is ridiculous. And this is on the heels of him making making Fauci admit that there's no reinfection, that there's studies that can't find anybody who was reinfected, which means that all these rules they're making, they're saying you have to have a vax for this and a vax for that. It should be vax or recovered from COVID, because there's no evidence of reinfection.
So Bob brought up a completely different topic here, so I'll let him get in here with this. It's something that I was thinking about, but I hadn't really on Israel and Hamas. So regarding the latest upsurge in violence in pitting Israel versus Hamas, all Americans should consider how they would feel if the evening news reports displayed missile rather than weather maps. And then he linked to a website. Kind of, that's interesting, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're right. And these missile attacks. I mean, I saw a picture of like the Iron Dome and everything like that, which was pretty incredible there. But this once again starts to bring up the should we be supporting Israel? What about him? Who's at fault here? Who's the evil person? With this, I think AOC attacked Yang on this. On favoring Israel and stuff like that. So the left has one opinion, and a lot of other Americans have another opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, Hamas bombed Israel. So if you're looking for who the good guys are, if you bomb someone, then they're going to bomb you back. So you're going to deserve it, right? If you don't want to get bombed, don't bomb. Why did they bomb? Why now? Why not a year ago or a year from now? Okay, the reason is because when Biden became president, he restored a bunch of money to the Palestinian Authority that the Trump administration had quit giving them. They're like, you're not partners for peace. You're not doing anything constructive. What are we buying with our money? And withdrew the money. And like day one, Biden went and restored the money. So they used that money to buy. These are, they used to shoot these rockets into Israel that, if they hit you head on, you might get hurt. But, it had to be they were glorified fireworks in a lot of ways, like cherry bombs or whatever. But what they're doing now is actual weapons, right? It's actual rockets. It's actual shoulder-held rocket launchers is what they're using. And so, these are real weapons. Where'd they get them? They didn't get them from us, right? They got some money from us, but they got the weapons from Iran, because we've gone back to being on Iran's side in this dispute. That's another one. It's like, maybe there's a good reason why the Democrats want to promote Iran at the expense of Israel, but they have not explained it to me. And maybe others can pipe in, but one of these countries is clearly our ally and perhaps our most important ally, and the other one is clearly one of our most dangerous enemies. It hates us more than almost any other country. So why are we funding the one that's our enemy? Why are we helping them? It's never made any sense to me. And the minute Biden got into office, he realigned us with the Obama, Democrat, John Kerry, traitorous policy of backing Iran against Israel. Yeah.
And then, Israel never sit back and just take that punishment or whatever, the attacks. They're going to fire back and fight back, and everything like that. I mean, so I'm not really sure what they gain by doing that, except unless it's just some kind of a thing that's like, well, remember us, remember Palestine and all of these kinds of things, just to put that back into play.
Yeah, it's more artificially created martyrism, right? Yeah. Martyrdom. They're trying to just create martyrs and create a situation where Israel overreacts, and then they can condemn them to the world. That's all it's about. Right.
All right. We're down to about the last couple minutes, so go.
So a couple of things. Congratulations to Glenn Youngkin for winning the Virginia Republican nomination. He's a basketball guy. One of his top campaign guys was the person who got me to coach McLean Select basketball. So I'm happy for him. I also think that he might be the right mix, because he does not want to disavow Trump. A lot of these guys, I'm going to win in Northern Virginia, I got to act like I never heard of Trump. Well, that's not really what he does, right? But it's kind of hard to paint him as a Trumper for the people who hate him, and it's kind of hard to to say he's anti-Trump to the people who like Trump. So, he might be pretty close to the sweet spot. Smart guy, knows what he's doing. He's already drawing a lot of fire from McAuliffe. McAuliffe's like, well, he's a venture capital guy. It's like, well, you're a bagman for the Clintons, and if he says, and I've said, if they're going to try to link him to Trump, link McAuliffe to Biden. Say, hey, you support this? You support this disaster going on now? Why should we elect that? That's the problem. So the other one is Tim Tebow has been signed. He's back in the NFL. It looks like he's going to try out to be a tight end for the Jacksonville Jaguars. His college coach, Urban Meyer, is now the coach of Jacksonville. I guess there's some complaint that he got a chance before Colin Kaepernick did. But look, I'm going to tell you, I've said this all along, and I've never seen anything that proves one scintilla of this to be wrong. That is, if Colin Kaepernick was good enough to play quarterback in the NFL, he would be playing quarterback in the NFL. The reason he's not doing it is he is not good enough to play at that level. There are no other reasons.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, on both fronts. I mean, I think with one cue I take, on Youngkin is Bill Bowling, who has disparaged a lot of Republicans, but he actually gives Youngkin, I mean, it's going to be a tough battle against McAuliffe, but he thinks that out of the candidates, Youngkin actually had the best chance, out of all of them, to beat McAuliffe. So the Republicans chose the right person, and it wasn't, it was different. I mean, you had a drive-through convention, gave a lot more people to.
Drive-through is not really the right word. It's
drive up.
Huh? Well, it was more. There was more to it than that, but
no, that's how it was labeled from.
Yeah, they had a word for it, and I can't think of what it was. But
I think there was something like unassembled or something.
Unassembled convention. That's what.
Unassembled, I think, was the official word.
But you had to. But they thought 5,000 people would sign up. 55,000 people signed up. But 32,000 voted. So there was a lot of interest on the Republican side,
which is far more than they would have if they'd held a convention for sure.
And then convention, you have to sit there all day, which they kind of couldn't do.
Right.
Exactly. You've been there. You've done that.
Yep, I have been there. And for Tebow, I mean, the thing with Kaepernick, the Kaepernick thing is just like this idea that when the left comes out and they're talking about it's Tebow's white privilege, I'm like, come on, give me a break. I mean, there's not even a guarantee that Tebow's going to make the team. He's going to try out. If his skill level is there, fine. If it's not, he's not going to make the team. He's just signed a contract. But Colin Kaepernick's skills in today's NFL, they don't match. They don't fit anymore.
He never really had the arm strength. I mean, there were problems all along. He was able to mask them when he was younger, but it caught up to him.
Right. All right.
He's not there because he wasn't able to be there.
That's right.
And the same thing is true of Tebow. If he's not the best, one of the best 2 or 3 tight ends that team has, he'll be cut.
That's right. So anyway, all right, we're done. Thank you everyone for watching, joining, chiming in, particularly Bob, who's always got some good, insightful comments. As always, please stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And God bless America, and we'll see you again next week. And I don't need a teleprompter like Joe Biden, who can't seem to stay on the teleprompter.